Welcome, everyone, to the Boiling Point Podcast. I am your host, JD, and this is episode 87, the constitutional facts and moral arguments about abortion. And for this conversation, I brought on our senior faith correspondent, Pastor Gavin Whitcomb. Pastor Gavin, welcome back to the Boiling Point Podcast.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
Yes, thank you. And it's always great that you can continue to take the time to be on. I appreciate it very much. Now, you can follow Pastor Gavin. Go to facebook.com/mooresmountain.church. That's his Facebook. And search just for Pastor Gavin Whitcomb on YouTube, and you can find his YouTube channel. He does his sermons online. So you can check him out, give him a like, and give him a share. We share him a lot on the Facebook page, our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Boiling Point Podcast. And then, of course, our sister show, Mayhem Media, facebook.com/Mayhem Media. That's where we handle all our entertainment episodes now. And, of course, Marcus Frederiksen plays us in. You can check out his music on reverbnation.com/Marcus Frederiksen. Give him a share out as well. We miss you, brother. His second event is coming up here in a couple of days. So we'll have Mia back on to discuss how that goes in the coming days. We also have other episodes coming up in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for the next few weeks. We should be coming out with some regular episodes for you. It's been about 2 weeks since we did a Boiling Point podcast, but I had some episodes to shoot on our sister show, like I said, so make sure you check that out. And we're going to discuss here the constitutional, Roe v Wade is potentially being overturned. And so I wanted to talk about, I did an episode on the Patriot Edda. Check out Matt from the Patriot Edda. He was on an episode of the Boiling Point Podcast. He has his own show. I did an episode on his podcast about this, but I wanted to get Pastor Gavin's take on it, so we're doing another show here on the Boiling Point Podcast. Roe versus Wade's being overturned, potentially. And, of course, that gets everybody all up in arms about abortion because they don't actually know what Roe v. Wade is or does. But, of course, that brought the abortion talk back out, so I wanted to bring you on for that. Now, before we get to the constitutional arguments, I am against abortion.
Yeah, and I am too.
Okay.
Yeah, pro-life.
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
Pro-life. You can quibble over the little things and stuff, and we're not here to do that. That's not what we're doing in this episode. We're going to talk specifically about Roe v. Wade and the constitutional arguments about abortion and the moral arguments about abortion. So we're going to start with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Okay? Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, that's what the 14th Amendment says. Now, let's talk about what that means to everybody else, okay? Now, I want to start with right at the top, all persons born or naturalized. Pastor Gavin, what does that mean to you?
Well, if you're born in the United States or if you're naturalized, you immigrate and then you become a U.S. citizen.
That's what naturalized is. And now, would you take all persons born to be all persons born, as in outside of the womb, actually born, right?
Well, yeah, it would mean that, but if someone were to say, well, then, unborn babies are excluded from that, I think here's where their reasoning is faulty.
Okay.
In the world of the Founding Fathers, they would have never conceived of the idea that the law would give you the right to kill your unborn child.
But
in other words, like all 13 of the original states, I almost said colonies because they were, but all 13 of the original states in their state laws had laws outlawing abortion. And they were in effect whenever the Constitution was adopted by all those 13
Is that right?
states.
Now, see,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do
Yeah.
some checking on that. Well, I'll definitely have to do a follow-up
Yeah.
episode then at some point. So you're saying that each of the colonies and then states had anti-abortion laws within their state laws.
Yes, absolutely. So that's why it
So
doesn't
abortion-
say unborn babies included.
So
Yeah.
abortion wasn't new back then. Abortion's been going on since people have been
Right.
getting pregnant. Okay,
Yeah.
people
Oh,
have
yeah.
been figuring out a way to kill preborn babies. That's the term we're going to use.
Yeah, for thousands of years. Yeah.
So, but why is it? Then why did they put in all persons, born or naturalized? Why did they word it that way?
Well,
There's so many other things within the
Yeah.
Constitution they specifically worded for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Why not this?
yeah. Well, I'm not a
Or at least, what's your opinion? Yes, of
I'm
course.
not a constitutional scholar.
No.
But any person with average intelligence, which I would say I'm an average, you can read this. You typically don't write things concerning people that aren't born yet. Typically, it's just assumed that you're talking about people who are already here on this
Yeah.
planet and they're out walking around, living and breathing. So it's just saying, hey, if you're born here or you become a naturalized citizen, you have these rights. They're protected.
Now, when I did the episode with Matt, who did actually go to law school for a while and studied the Constitution, which is why I was on that episode with him. He knows the Constitution very well. And I had him on an episode of the Boiling Point podcast where we talked about the Constitution as well. Now, he says that because it says all persons born or naturalized, that the Constitution then does not protect preborn children.
Well, here's where I would argue with that.
Okay.
It says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. An unborn baby is a life.
Now I gotta play. Now I'm gonna have to play the devil's advocate as I always do.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is the part Matt played when I made the argument that Pastor Gavin is making right now.
Yeah.
It said, but that does not apply because of the previous statement: all persons born or naturalized. Babies or preborn children have not been born yet, and therefore are not protected under this section because of that.
Yeah, well,
that's what his opinion is. That's what the point I'm bringing up to you. Now, he did study the Constitution, so as much as we may want to argue with him, we're gonna. I mean, unless we come up with something big, what are your?
Well, I've heard other people who are lawyers and constitutional. See, some of the Constitution is up to interpretation. If you go to a liberal leftist-leaning law school, then you're going to have a different take than if you go to a more conservative law school, like, say, Regent University.
Okay.
And so there are legal scholars who would read it just like I do. I'm just reading it in English.
Yeah.
And in the English language, the fact that it mentions no person can deprive of life, liberty, that's not negated by the beginning of this paragraph.
It's not.
No.
So
no.
you're saying, so you think that all persons born, but it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and rabble are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. But a preborn baby has not been born.
Yeah. Well, true.
So how do we get around that?
Well, I would just say that...
Or not get around it, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word.
Well, no, I know what you mean. You're playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah. So what's the argument to that then?
Well, I would say to people that hold that position that that an unborn baby is a person.
Is a person.
Yes. And I would say that's a fact of biology. Like, okay, is an unborn baby a living thing or is it a dead thing? It's a living thing. Is it human, or is it like a raccoon, or a chicken, or a fox, or...
Well, the other side would use the term fetus.
Yeah, fetus is the Latin word for baby. So yeah.
Excellent point.
So that's, I'm not being dishonest and disingenuous and twisting the language. My claim would be an unborn baby is a person. And the Bible is very clear about that, too. So... I would say if you go to a leftist law school, you're going to say, an unborn baby isn't a person. If you go to a right-leaning law school, you'll say, an unborn baby is a person.
Yeah. Now, Matt from the Patriot Inn, and go check out that episode. We have a great episode on that. He, I don't know what school he went to. I did not ask him that actually. But he is not he doesn't like terms. He doesn't like being called a liberal or a conservative, or a Democrat or a Republican. So he doesn't like any of those. The only word that he ever used to describe himself was a pagan. But he does know the Constitution very well, and he's also against abortion. But in the conversation, that's what the argument he was making, was that because of the all persons born or naturalized, that excludes preborn children from being protected by the Constitution.
Yeah, well, I can see how.
Therefore rendering the person not depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process doesn't hold. Now,
see, I would say this: if the Constitution guarantees those rights to people who have already been born, you mean they wouldn't intend those rights for unborn babies? They can't defend themselves. They can't speak for themselves. You mean they wouldn't want those rights for the unborn if they want them for the born, those who are walking around breathing on earth? That's what I would say.
I think I would agree with you, and I would also agree that if the states all had laws banning abortion, then maybe they couldn't foresee a time when those laws would be changed. Perhaps.
Yeah, they wouldn't even have conceived of any need.
But my counter argument is just that they specifically, because of the specific wording, and there's a lot of things the founding fathers could not foresee in our country. However, they put in mechanisms to be able to change and adapt new laws. They gave us a system to be able to do that.
Right, and their system was not the Supreme Court. The system was the amendment process.
Yes, the Supreme Court does not have the right, does not make law. They do not decide. The only thing they can do is rule on constitutionality of laws and basically laws or cases.
Yeah. Even though they've been usurping that role in making laws, like Roe V Wade, legalizing abortion.
Yes, actually, that's technically not what it does. Actually, let's go into that then, and then we're going to talk about how we can change it. What needs to happen in order to change it. But first, let's talk about what got us here, and that is Roe versus Wade.
Yeah. So I can see what those guys are saying. I mean, on the surface, their argument makes sense. I can see why they think that.
Yeah.
So now Roe v. Wade, back in, I believe that was 1973.
Yes, it was in the 70s. Yeah.
In that case, a woman wanted an abortion. Jane Roe, they called her, because they didn't want to have her name publicly.
In Texas.
Yeah. Even though eventually Jane Roe became a Christian and a pro-life activist.
Really, later. I did not. Now I did not read. I did not read that part about it.
Later on in life.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check on that. No, I did not check that out. Or about. I only stuck with the case when I was looking up my stuff. I only stuck with the case. Now, Roe versus Wade. Do you want to continue? A woman wanted to have an abortion.
Okay, so this woman wanted to have an abortion and took it to court, and eventually it ended up in the Supreme Court. So
now it was in Texas. Which at the time Texas had no all abortion was illegal. It didn't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the case went all the way to the Supreme Court
against
the district attorney of the county that they lived in, Wade, who I can't, and I'm totally drawing a blank on his first name.
I don't remember either. So anyway, what happened is that the Supreme Court, the majority said that Jane Doe had a right to an abortion, that the Constitution gave her that right. Now, it's not specifically stated, but they sort of snuck it in. They said the Constitution implies a right to privacy, and so she has the right to make up this private decision, what she wants to do.
That's
based
more,
on an umbrum.
That's more so what it did than legalized pregnancy. I don't like to disagree with Pastor Gavin or correct him. I don't like doing that at all. But in this
I'm
case,
just saying part of it.
Yeah. That's how people. Well, see, that's what people think. It's actually a very terribly worded decision and law that's written
So, yeah, go ahead and share with us
It's now
how you would describe it and what you
this is what I got based on my research. Okay, what Roe v. Wade and the ruling that they made, it was more about privacy than it was about abortion. Okay,
right.
And where does that privacy apply into what degree with the father and with the baby or with the preborn child? So basically, their decision. It gave the states rights to decide on whether or not abortion should be legal or illegal, because a state can do that. A state can make abortion completely illegal without violating anything in the Constitution if a state wanted to. Despite what people think, Roe v. Wade does not make making abortion illegal within your own state illegal. A state can still do that if they wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that Roe v. Wade made abortion legal for everybody. That's not the case. What they still left it up to the states. Each state can decide on abortion as they see fit.
Well, then the mainstream media has been lying to us.
They absolutely have
these
been.
Years.
Yes, they absolutely have been. Now, they also divided the pregnancy into 3 terms. Okay, which is where we get the trimesters. Okay, the first trimester, the decision whether or not to end a pregnancy solely with the woman. Okay. The second trimester, the government can regulate, but not ban abortion. And this is where it is. Actually, you're right. States, and this is where the third trimester here. In the second trimester, government can regulate, but not ban abortion. That's the government. And that's applying to the federal government, not the state governments. Okay? It's important to make that distinction as well. Third trimester, states could ban abortion if the child could sustain outside the mother's womb, except under medical emergency involved the health and welfare of a child. Okay, so that means all states. So you're partly right, and I'm partly right. In the third trimester, a state can make it completely illegal. Okay, in the second trimester, they can regulate it, but they cannot ban it. And in the first trimester, it rests solely up to the woman. So you are right. A state can, if they did make abortion completely illegal at all stages, then there's a chance that they would be going to the Supreme Court at some point in time, which is why there are some states, I think, that don't have abortion, aren't there?
My understanding is it's legal in all states, but different states have different restrictions.
Which, based on the Roe v. Wade, is exactly right.
But my understanding was if a state wanted to completely outlaw it,
now that
Roe v. Wade wouldn't.
Actually, now that I just reread that again, I think I misspoke at the beginning and said that states could outlaw it. No, they can do it in the third trimester. They can ban all abortion, but I think you're right that in the first trimester they cannot at all, and in the second trimester they can put regulations in, but not completely ban it. I'm going to look up if all 50 states have abortion.
And I'm pretty sure they do.
Now with the it doesn't make abortion legal. Roe v. Wade does not make abortion illegal, but it doesn't make it necessarily legal either. Like it's not a right. You don't have the right to an abortion. They just prevented states from outlawing it completely.
Yeah, I guess some of this is like a matter of semantics. By semantics, I mean using different words to mean different things, and like some people would say, well, it did enshrine a right to abortion for some women, but it depends on what specific angle of this issue you're talking about.
Yes, and you're right. All 50 states, yes. And I was wrong. I misspoke at the beginning before Pastor Gavin and I got into the trimesters. I apologize. I'm the one that misspoke. I had my head in the clouds for a moment. Okay, that's not. States cannot outlaw abortion. They cannot do that. They can do it in the third trimester. They can do it in the third trimester. They can put regulations in on the second, and they cannot do anything in the first trimester. You're absolutely right. I was very wrong, even though I have the notes sitting right here in front of me.
I never knew that they made a distinction between the 3 different trimesters.
That's where it comes from, actually, is from that case. Yes, that was part of their decision. And it was more about the privacy, who gets the right to know and stuff, at what point do people do people get to know? Does the government have an involvement at all? Which is where the law comes in. Now, if this gets overturned, states will be able to completely outlaw abortion.
And that's how it should be. Like, it should have been the states decide this. Now, we would want our state legislatures to completely ban it. But that's how it should have been, not the federal government sticking its nose in and deciding this.
Yes.
Or 9 unelected judges deciding this. It should be the result of our state, our democratically elected legislatures passing legislation.
Okay, and I would absolutely agree with that. So even if, all right, so let's say Roe v Wade gets overturned, are you in favor of a federal law that would ban abortion?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of that.
You'd be in favor of that?
Yeah, although it really should be the states, but
I'm glad you just brought that up because that's a federal law shouldn't be made until and that's what we're going to talk about here. How do we change it? Let's go into that. Let's go into that for a minute here as I move to the correct portion of my notes. Okay. The only way to do it would be to add an amendment to the 14th Constitution, the quickest and easiest way without having any problems at all, would be to change the 14th Amendment of the Constitution under Article 5, and we'll talk about Article 5 here in just a minute, and amend it to include preborn children, the phrase at the top. If we change that phrase at the top, then there's no more ambiguity in deciding whether or not preborn children have the constitutional rights that everybody else has.
Yeah, that's true. Do you know, I compare this to slavery. Okay, we had slavery in America. In fact, all the world had it.
Yes, let's keep that in mind. Yes, all of the world had it, and
but Great Britain and the U.S., we played a major role in getting rid of it.
Yes, but also slavery has affected people of every race, nationality, and color. Right. Okay, it's not like it's only been, you know what I mean, only minorities in this country. It's been every race and at some point in time has been enslaved by another civilization in this world. Okay,
so America isn't the worst nation on earth because
no.
So anyway, slavery, like, people recognized, hey, here's a class or group of people that are being mistreated or oppressed and taken advantage of. Let's outlaw this. Well, so they called them abolitionists, people that wanted to abolish slavery by law. Well, I'm an abolitionist when it comes to abortion. I believe it's murder and it should be outlawed. So, and these poor, just like the slaves couldn't defend themselves, so other people thought, hey, let's get rid of this evil practice. I'm saying those unborn babies can't speak for themselves. They can't defend themselves. They're defenseless. So I'm an abolitionist for abortion. When it comes to abortion. Yeah. Let's abolish it by law.
Yeah. Now, before we get to the Constitution for a second and how we would change it, then let's talk about that for a minute. Let me play. I mean, I have to do it because everybody and their brother does it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I'm also going to, of course, help you refute it as well right after I say it. What about rape and incest?
Good question.
Even though let's be clear though that you're talking about less than 1% of abortions.
Right.
Is this reason, okay?
Right.
So this is really, we're going to talk about it, but it's less than 1% of abortions, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if a child is conceived as a result of rape or incest, my view is that doesn't give you the right to murder or execute that child because of its parents' crimes. And there have been people like there's, I think her name is Kathy Barnett. Right now, she is running for the Senate in Pennsylvania in the Republican primary. She is a black and I'm not calling her African American because she was born in America.
Yeah, she's an American.
Yeah, she's a black American woman.
American woman, exactly.
She's very successful, very bright, brilliant, and she's running for the Senate. There's someone else I'm voting for because I like them better and knew them personally when I was a little kid. But anyway, she'd be a good person to vote for. When her mother was 11 years old, her mother was raped, and that's how she was conceived.
Oh.
And now she's grown up to be a successful black woman and is running for the Senate, and she's a Christian, loves the Lord. So God can take even bad things and bring good out of it. So that, to me, that doesn't justify murder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if it comes to where, suppose a woman's life is in danger by the pregnancy, well, you can't let both the woman and the baby die.
Yeah.
So you would have to save the life of the mother and deliver the baby prematurely if you could and do what you can to save it, but you can't let both die.
But let's talk about that for just 1 second, about if it comes down to the mother's life. Who makes that decision then? Do the doctors make that decision? Does the mother make that decision? Does the father have any say?
Just
your opinion, of course. This is all hype. We're talking about if all of abortion was outlawed except for in a case, or maybe other cases we'll get to in a second, but at least if it was for the life of the mother.
Okay, well, the way they would come to know and understand her life was in danger would be the advice of the physician. And if they're married, ideally, both of them would discuss that together. Hey, what do we do here?
So the doctor would find it, but then you're saying it would ultimately come down to the mother and maybe the father, but ultimately the mother would have the final say in it.
Right. And some people would say, well, shouldn't the baby's life be saved? Well, no, the mother's life, because here's why.
Okay.
The mother has more responsibilities. Like, okay, if she's married, she has a husband. So, you mean the wife should die and he be deprived of a husband to save the life of the baby who has no responsibilities? No one's really depending on that baby.
Suppose that baby's dependent, yeah.
Right, and suppose the mother has like 3 other kids. You mean you should let her die to save the life of the baby? I mean, you would want to save both lives, but if you have to choose between the two, that's where I come down.
That's where you come down.
I think the best option would be to choose the life of the mother.
But you would be okay with it being a choice, right? The mother choosing to for the baby and to sacrifice her life then for the baby. You're not saying that you should save the mother. You're saying that's just your opinion.
It should be their choice.
But it ultimately should be their choice.
Yeah, and I would go with the mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the baby's probably in danger anyway.
That's interesting. That's interesting to hear you say that you would be that would be okay with you even under that circumstance.
Yeah. Now, what I would do if I were the doctor is try to deliver the baby. And do what you can to save it, but. So that's where I come down on that issue.
That's very interesting there. Okay, now let's talk about some other cases where, let's say, the baby was going to be in pain for its whole life or a severe disability, and they may not have any quality of life. Although, who are we to decide what quality of life is, by the way?
Right.
But still, there are some extreme cases where babies are born, they're in extreme pain, they have, they don't really have a quality of life. What are your positions on that?
Yeah, well,
I mean, with the technology today, I don't want to interrupt you again. I don't cut you off, but with the technology today, we know a lot of things before a baby's born, and we're even getting to the point now where we can almost manipulate genetics. Another podcast topic. So, like, we know what is going to be with a baby long before it's born. Now at this point,
we can know a lot, but sometimes that knowing what's going to happen can be wrong. For example. Betsy Sensenig?
Yeah.
Okay, she's a doctor.
Yep.
Right? She's, attractive, intelligent.
Someone from Mount Olivet Campground.
Yeah,
yep.
Right. My understanding is that when her mother was carrying her, they did amniocentesis, and the doctor told Janelle, you should get an abortion because there's something wrong with this child. It's not going to be healthy. It's going to be, have real problems. And my cousin said, no, I'm not going to do that. And look.
Yeah, and now she's a doctor.
Yeah. so I'm not poo-pooing all medical knowledge and testing, but I would say this. We have to be careful, like, whether or not we're going to try to play God. I believe if a baby is born and it has really serious problems and would not have a good quality of life, we're not obligated to do heroic measures to try to save that baby. And so I don't think it's wrong or immoral to just let that baby die if it's really serious conditions that he's going to have a horrible life.
That's that's going to lead us. That's perfect. That's why I love Pastor Gavin on. We don't even need to discuss the episode beforehand. He leads me right into the next point just by our conversation, and that's perfect because that's my next point now. So you're saying, so let's say, if I can, where are you then on assisted suicide?
Yeah, well,
because again, if you haven't figured it out, you can see where we're going with this.
Right. I don't believe in assisted suicide. I don't believe in suicide of any kind.
Really?
Yeah. And now, like, if somebody is dying, I find no problem with the doctor giving them medications that knocks them out and relieves their pain. But
is that not assisted suicide then?
No, I don't mean.
Or you don't
I don't mean knock them out, like kill them. I mean
you mean just
relieve their pain.
Okay.
And maybe just they're sleeping the whole time.
Okay.
But here's the problem with assisted suicide. First of all, it's murder. It's wrong to kill somebody, I think. But if we start allowing assisted suicide, it'll corrupt the medical profession. And another danger then is that, like, doctors they're supposed to do no harm, But another danger is that they that ability to assist people in suicide could be used on people that really don't want to die.
Now
somebody else decides, hey,
that's a very good. That's a very valid argument for assisted suicide. Certainly, very very valid argument that it could be used wrong in the wrong way.
Now, suppose somebody is dying. Okay, they're dying and they're in pain and they're in agony.
Yeah,
they're dying. They're on their deathbed.
Okay,
and they're getting ready to die. I don't believe that a lethal dose of a medication to take away their pain and put them out, I don't believe that would be wrong, because they're already dying and they're going to be dead in an hour or so. So there may be cases where
it's all right. Yeah. Now, so you're against.
They're already dying.
So you're against even suicide.
Yeah.
But I mean, now if I understand this correctly, and you could please correct me if I'm wrong. Now, the Bible is it is against suicide in the sense that if it's a selfish reason that you've taken your own life. But I've been given to understand, not by Pastor Gavin, and he can correct me right now if I'm wrong, that suicide, though, is not necessarily wrong in all cases.
Right. Well, that's true. Like, okay, suppose you were fighting in a war, and you were with other men, and somebody threw a grenade right near you guys, and you said, I'm going to jump on that grenade so that it kills me so I can save the life of my buddies. That would be suicide, technically, but that would be a loving thing, because greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend.
Now, what about if you were going to be captured by the enemy, and to avoid the torture and the questioning, or even thinking to yourself that you're not going to be able to hold up against the torture and the questioning, and you will release information you shouldn't? Would if you taking your own life be considered suicide then, or would you have a problem with it in that case?
That's something that each individual person would have to decide.
See,
that wouldn't be in the same category as I feel sad. I'm going to kill myself. Exactly.
Yeah. I was given to believe that if taking your own life, I'm trying to figure out how to word it here, taking your own life to prevent further harm. to yourself or others,
yeah.
then it is okay in that situation as well.
I in general, I believe I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, like in the Bible, there's a case where King Saul, the first king of Israel, he was fighting the last battle of his life against, I think it was the Philistines. And they severely wounded him. And he was losing the battle, so Saul fell on his sword. I forget if he was wounded or not, but anyway, he fell on his sword so that they wouldn't capture him and torture him. And
yeah.
So, I mean, that was part of a war, and that was suicide, but if he knew that he was going to be tortured and killed anyway, was it wrong for him to fall on his sword? The Bible really doesn't say either way, So,
really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So I could see how.
Well, the reason I bring this up is because I believe, and I'm not going to say who I brought it up to, but I brought this up to somebody who I don't know if knows the Bible as well as you do, but very, very close. And I asked him, it was a total hypothetical, and it was about zombies, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, would it be wrong then if I was surrounded by zombies, I had one bullet in the chamber, and so instead of trying to fight the zombies, I just killed myself to prevent myself from being eaten and turned into a zombie?
I would say no.
Yeah, and then they told me that no, because you're doing that to prevent further harm from being done. You know that if you're turned into a zombie, you're going to eat other people. You're preventing further harm from being done.
I would agree with it. Yeah.
So, and then I brought it. And they were also the same person that told me that if you're a soldier and you're being captured and you're going to be tortured, you're not going to be able to hold up against the questioning or the torture, that taking your own life would not be a sin then, because in doing so you're preventing further harm to potentially other people then. Yeah. So if suicide is more
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's more of a noble, not a noble gesture, but if keeping yourself alive as opposed to killing yourself is going to cause more harm than just killing yourself, then then maybe it's okay. And really, it's really how it's done, right? Though, isn't it? If it's about other people, if you're doing it to save other people, okay, then maybe, but not because you're sad or because you think people will be better off without you. Right. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about extreme cases of war or torture or things of that nature. Not just I'm sad and people will be better off without me. Yeah, these are extreme cases that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you think so what about with suffering? What if someone who has a degenerative, debilitating disease wants to end his life before the disease takes over him and he can't do that for himself?
Yeah, well, in my view, that's
still wrong.
He's playing God. Yeah.
It's still wrong then? That's your position?
Okay. That's my position.
Okay. Well, then we don't need to go into your position on if babies because you're against abortion. So my I don't want to say compromise, but what I was going to suggest to you then was if we don't know about a baby until it's actually born was one of the things you said. No matter how much technology and no matter what we know, we don't actually know sometimes until they're born. So if when they were born they had a disease with bad pain, they had no quality of life, would you be okay with assisted suicide at that point? But I think we've just covered that you're not okay with assisted suicide. No. And except for the most extreme cases, you're not okay with suicide at all.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if someone is in pain, they're, later in life, and there's nothing that can be done, that's just their lot then. They have to suffer. God wants them to suffer then. Yeah,
and it's not God wants them to suffer, but it's part of living in a sinful world. So in a sense you could say that, it's just within his will to allow that. But I would say, avail yourself to any pain relieving drugs.
But there are some cases where pain relievers are not going to help, or narcotics are not going to help, or even if they are, then they spend their their remaining time left just sleeping anyway. But you're still of the mind that's just that's just how it is, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
That's very interesting. I find that very interesting. And I don't totally disagree with you on that point.
Even though it seems a shame,
Yeah, and I don't totally disagree with you. I'm not sure where I stand yet on certain assisted suicides and stuff. I do agree with you though that it potentially is very dangerous. That there can be some dangerous consequences from making that legal or allowing that to happen. There are some dangerous consequences. Okay, no question about it. And that's, I think, the main thing is that it's the way it would be abused is the biggest concern, more so than the people who actually it would helping them. It's more about the people that might abuse it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And like on 9/11, if I were up in the tower,
there you go. Okay.
And it was on fire, and I had the choice between getting burned alive to death or jumping out, I'd jump out.
So that's not a case in suicide either.
Suicide, but
would it? I mean, because because you are choosing to take your own life.
Wrong?
But
no, because I'm gonna die because the flames are coming up. It's getting hotter and hotter. So
all right,
I'll either die by flames or by jumping. So
let me play the other side here, and be a nitpicker. There's some people are probably gonna like this question. Others are probably gonna be like, "What are you doing asking that question?" I understand. I don't want to ask it either, but you just said. And I'm not trying to get you in a gotcha either, Pastor. Of course not.
No, I don't care.
But you just said that if someone is suffering from pain, that's their lot. That's the way it has to be, right?
Yeah.
Is this the same not then for that situation? Does God then not want you to be burned alive then, and not jump off that building?
Well, there's some similarities between the two things, but here's where it's different.
Okay.
It's in no time that very day you are going to die. Like the flames in the tower in 9/11, the flames are coming up. You can see the smoke. It's getting hotter and hotter. Your death is imminent. It's going to be here before you know it. So there's no doubt about it. One of those two are going to kill you. So in that strange, unusual circumstance, I believe you could choose which way you want to go.
So what about somebody who has a terminal illness?
Yeah. Well, I would say, the terminal illness, if it's going to kill them that very day.
That day, so it's only it's only because it's that day. Is it?
Well, there's a certain I guess the way to explain it is I don't believe that we are allowed to play God with our life. And if there's some suffering we have, we're just not, my life's not going well, so I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
I just think there's a difference between someone with a terminal disease and somebody in a tower, their death is certain and it's immediate. So, somebody, I just don't believe that God gives us the right to, I'm going to end my life right now because in about 3 years I'll be dead with cancer. So I'm going to end my life right now, so I don't have to suffer.
I don't think. Well, all right. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a difference.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. I have cancer. I'm going to kill myself, even though I might potentially have 10 years to live.
Yeah.
I think then we're talking about. I think we were on different pages then for a minute. What about the people who have cancer, who are bedridden, who are dying, who are taking pain medicines, that are not helping? Who will likely be dead, let's say within the next 6 months.
Well,
and the last 6 months are going to be nothing but pain and suffering.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to get you you into a corner to answer yes. I'm just trying to figure out. I'm trying to gauge when do you consider assisted suicide okay?
That's a good question. In that particular scenario, I don't know exactly where you could draw the line. I'd say some of those things are not clear, at least to me.
Okay.
Now, I would tend to err on the side of caution, because once we start saying assisted suicide is okay, it takes us on a slippery slope.
Absolutely.
To really abusing that and playing God when we have no right to. So
absolutely, and
so
I absolutely agree with you that the potential there for dangerousness is high, very high. Yeah. And even if there was ever a law written that did legalize assisted suicide, it would have to be a very specific specifically worded law, in my opinion. Very specific. It would not be able to have any ambiguous parts or vague parts at all. It would have to be very, very specific.
And I'd say it should deal with a very, very short time of life left. You know.
Yes, absolutely. As you said, yes, because I think that was where we were confused at the beginning of the conversation. You were thinking that I was asking about people who have years potentially or whatever, but I was trying to ask about people who were clearly at the end of their life, who were clearly suffering. Is it not then okay to end their suffering if that person also wants it?
Yeah, that's
these
are tough.
Tough questions.
Ethical questions.
Yes. And when I was talking about it with some other people, not on a podcast, I said, "Listen, some of these questions are for wiser people than I." And now I'm not going to say wiser people than we. I consider you to be far wiser than I, Pastor. But these are questions for people who are very wise and can look at these questions. These are not questions. We're talking about them, which is what the Boiling Point podcast is about. We're bringing up a topic. We're discussing it right now.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment on whether or not you think, should all abortion be legal? Should all abortion be illegal? Under what circumstances is abortion allowed? Are you for assisted suicide? Are you against assisted suicide? And at what point would that be allowed? If you have opinions, share them with us. We want to hear about it. I want to hear about what other people have to say and what other people think. So
and John, if I could say something about children conceived through rape or incest or just that they don't want to be parents. My understanding is that there are a lot of infertile couples. Like we're talking about married couples that they want to have children and they just can't conceive. And there are plenty of couples, married couples, who would love to have a baby to adopt. So instead of killing the baby, if you don't want it, give birth to it, and then give that baby up for adoption.
Yeah.
And giving a baby up for adoption is an honorable, loving thing to do.
Yep.
I mean, if you realize, man, I'm not ready for this child and I can't handle it. I know one family that... They have 3 children. I just found out recently that they were all 3 adopted.
Oh.
And, at the campground, Andy and Leela, they were both adopted as children.
Okay.
And that's one thing that led them to adopt 3 children.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's... And I've heard of people that to adopt a child, they had to go to Russia. They had to put $40,000 in cash in a cash belt and bribe different officials in order to adopt a child and then take it back to the United States. I mean, there are people that are going to different countries to get a child because there are not enough adoptees available for infertile couples that want them. So this idea of, I'm not ready for this child. Well, give birth to the child and then give it up for adoption.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a loving thing to do.
The adoption rate with babies is much higher than it is of any other age bracket. I think that's important to note also.
And that makes sense because they want it from the beginning.
Yeah, and now it's terrible for the kids who have to grow up in the system and stuff like that. But babies, if you give up a baby for adoption, the adoption rate is much higher for a baby than it is for toddlers, teenagers. Now. All right, so we've talked about the constitutionality of it. We've definitely talked about some of the moral arguments and of assisted suicide, which I didn't even have planned for this, but we went there anyway. Now we're going to talk about, real quick before we get ready to wrap up, we're going to talk about how we can change it, how we can change the law for abortion. All right, and now as I was saying, we need to amend the 14th Amendment of the Constitution under Article 5. Now, Article 5, I'm going to read Article 5 for you. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or, on the application of the legislators of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution. When ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the ninth section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. Now, if you didn't understand what some of that meant, it's okay, because I didn't either. I had to learn. Now, what that means is that 2/3 of Congress, meaning of the House and the Senate, that's what Congress is, the House and the Senate. So both houses, 2/3 of both houses can amend the Constitution if 2/3 of both houses approve. Not a majority, 2/3. Okay? Also, the state legislators of each state can call a convention to amend the Constitution. If 2/3 of the states have ratified the law, then they then can call for a convention and make Congress vote on putting it in, because two-thirds of the states have ratified these laws. Okay. Now, when it's talking about that it won't affect the first clause and the fourth clause, the first clause deals with the slave trade, which is no longer relevant in this country, and the fourth clause deals with taxes. So what that means, is that Congress could not make laws that messed with the slave trade, not slavery, the trade of slaves, and taxes. And there's other stuff in there too, but that's what the first and fourth sections are about. Okay, so Congress can't. They can change tax, like it's hard to explain. How do I explain it? They can't change, like they can't make one state pay more taxes than another state. Not the state tax, but like to the federal government. Okay, everybody gets paid the way it is. Yeah. Fourth clause deals with taxes. The Congress can't make laws with taxes that affect themselves or that affects one state adversely over other states. Did that sound right to you just then? Okay. I was trying to figure out how to put that into words there.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we would have to change it. We would have to change it. 2/3 of the states would either have to completely outlaw abortion after Roe v. Wade is overturned, or Congress could do it.
Actually, my understanding is Congress or the states could do it, whether or not Roe v. Wade's overturned or not. Couldn't they?
Really? No.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, see, Roe v. Wade is with
yeah, maybe, I don't know.
With the decision about the 3 trimesters and the fact, because see, in the first trimester,
I know what I was getting at. See, if the 2/3 of the states or 2/3 of the Congress made an amendment to the Constitution outlawing abortion, the Supreme Court couldn't say anything.
Yes, that's correct.
Constitutional.
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I was.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. And
I did
now
a
I don't
lousy
think
job of explaining what.
Yeah. That's okay. I just had trouble with that myself. Now, but see, my argument is that it would be less of a hassle. I think that would be too much of a hassle to just outlaw abortion, right? Mm-hmm. All we need to do is change the wording of the 14th Amendment, because
include unborn persons.
Yes. All persons born or preborn or naturalized.
Yeah.
That's all we would need to do. We would just need to add "or preborn" to the 14th Amendment. That's it. Literally 2 words, and then they would be protected by the Constitution. So I think that would be easier to succeed at than to just outlaw abortion totally. That would be my. Now, how do you do that? You pay attention to your local elections. You pay attention to who's running for your House of Representatives? Who is your representative? Who is your senator? Who is your congressman? These are questions and answers that you should already have.
And vote for pro-life,
Yes, vote for pro-life
candidates.
and also do your homework. Okay, do your homework, because there are some people out there who claim I'm pro-life. Oh, except for So you need to pay attention to that. You need do your homework, do your research. I know in today's world it's busy. Everybody's going nonstop. Nobody has time for anything anymore. But that's one thing I think this country needs to get back to. It needs to get back to educating itself. And this would be a good place to do it. Don't just go out there and repeat the same old talking points, then argue with the other side. It's not going to get you anywhere. Learn what the law is. Learn what the Constitution says, as we just helps you understand, and go with a different argument. Okay, as Pastor Gavin did at the beginning. What did he go with? He went with that based on that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or process, or life or liberty or property without due process of law. The only problem with that is, as we've talked about, is that all persons born or naturalized could be interpreted, as Pastor Gavin and I were talking, could be interpreted as not protecting the preborn, not protecting any preborn child. And if you go by just the basic wording, then it does say that, okay? It's something that needs to change. Don't just spout the same talking points. Oh, well, no person can be life, liberty, or property. Yeah, that's what everybody says, but according to this Constitution that we just read, it might not protect preborn babies. It can be interpreted as to not do that. So that's not an argument. That is not an argument. The argument is that the only argument that you can say is, well, you're right, it doesn't protect preborn people. How do we change it? Admit that it doesn't protect preborn babies, and then let's change it, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, I'd say the best way is to change the wording. I mean,
no, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yes, to change to amend the Constitution to include those words, right?
My interpretation of the wording says that
it does protect.
It was assumed that. Why would you even have to ask the question about newborns?
Yeah.
But it's not clearly laid out.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree then for people like us who are pro-lifers, let's stop saying it does do that.
Yeah.
No, it does do that. Let's just say you're right. It doesn't. Let's fix that. That's my argument. Is let's stop arguing with the other side about what it says. And let's just say, yeah, you're right. It does say that.
To make it clear.
And let's change it. Yeah, let's change it and make sure that that's what it says.
Yeah.
Because it is unclear at best. At best, it's unclear. And that's what Matt from the Patriot and Ed and I were talking about, because I made some of the same arguments you did, and he just kept going back. All persons born or naturalized. It clearly says all persons born or naturalized. Could it be interpreted to include babies? Sure, but it doesn't clearly say that. Let's fix it and let's make it clearly say that. That's my argument. Don't just get stuck in the echo chambers. Look for something outside the echo chambers. Don't just keep spouting the same headlines.
It's good to know that opposing point of view, because I've never heard that argument before.
Yeah.
So it's good to know it and be ready for it.
Yeah. And that's why even though I just had this, we just did this on the Patriot Edda, which is not my podcast, but I was happy to be on it, and I'm happy to be on it again. But
see, this is what I would say, John. I can prove from the Bible that unborn babies are persons. And so in that day and age, in the worldview from which that was written, they would have believed that unborn babies are persons. But it's still not clearly...
Yeah, my only thing is, my only thing is, and I understand what you were saying about the person that is that the state shall not deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. You're saying that in that instance of person, it is applying to preborn babies.
Yeah, because I'm saying in their worldview, they would have believed that unborn babies are persons, because the Bible says that in a couple different places.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that it needs to be spelled out.
Yeah, because it does. Because
in our day, people don't assume unborn babies to be persons. So
but not only that, but it says all persons born. It's to me, for me, and I'm on your side, Pastor. You know that you and I are on the same side in this regard.
But no, I know
when it comes to all persons born, it does say born, and I don't think even the founding fathers considered preborn babies to be born babies.
No, they did.
So that's the only thing, is that it does say persons born or naturalized, and I hate it. I hate that he brought that up. And as soon as he brought that up to me, and I actually thought about it, I was like, he might be right, and that's bad, because now what else there's not really much else I can argue. If they're not protected under the Constitution, then citing the Constitution isn't going to help. So we need to change that.
So I see how they could argue that.
Yeah.
So let's clarify
exactly.
Make it more clear and undeniable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Let's make it clear, that even preborn children are protected by the Constitution, and then we don't need to outlaw abortion. There's no reason to outlaw abortion. And then that way it can still be available as if the mother's life is in jeopardy, or in extreme cases. Because if you just outlaw abortion, then you're going to have to say outlaw abortion except, and then you're going to start adding a whole bunch of excepts, right? But if you just put in there that all persons born or preborn or naturalized in the United States, that includes them to have the same protections, which means you can't just get an abortion just because you want one. So that would be where my argument is. Let's stop arguing about whether or not it does, and let's just fix it so that it clearly does.
Yeah.
So that way,
a couple words.
Yeah, two words. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, and that's what I think would be the easiest way to resolve the issue, is just by changing those 2 words. Of course, it's not going to be an easy task. There's a whole half of this country, or maybe not half, but there's a large portion of this country that think that abortions should even be allowed to be used for birth control, which is completely heinous.
Right.
And of course, some people out there don't think that baby's life begins at conception, that it doesn't begin until it's out of the womb. So geography is what makes it alive. Some people think that until it takes its first breath. Well, guess what? Sometimes babies have been known to take a breath in the womb. So all these are just so ambiguous. Yeah. And my position is very clear. And I said this on that episode. My position is very clear. When is there a new life involved? The minute there is new DNA. At the very second there is a new DNA strand imprinted on this being, that's a person. That is a person.
Yeah.
And that happens at conception. The minute the sperm fertilizes the egg, DNA is begun to be imprinted.
Yeah, that's right. Now, a lot of people, they'll say, "Oh, it's my body, it's my choice." Well, I agree with that statement. It's my body, it's my choice. For the most part, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's not the woman's body.
No, it's
her baby.
Yeah.
It's her baby's body. So, yeah.
That argument doesn't hold water either.
No, and even the law recognizes it's not always a concrete thing, your body, your choice, because in most states, prostitution is outlawed.
That's also a good point.
Because they understand it causes a lot of problems and crime and so forth. And then there's certain...
Should it be?
I think so.
You think so? But is that from a moral argument or from a freedom standpoint? Because if we truly live in a free country, and if we live in a free country, and now we're going to get off on a little tangent here before we finish up. If we live in a free society, then we need a reason to make something illegal, not a reason to make something legal.
Mm-hmm.
That's also my argument for marijuana being legal too. There's no reason for it to be illegal. I find all arguments against why it should be illegal to be laughable. What about prostitution, though? There's certainly different arguments to be made for prostitution than marijuana. But we need a reason to make it illegal. What are those? What are you, in your opinion? What are those reasons?
Throughout history, we've recognized that it causes a lot of societal problems. Divorce, breakup of homes, sexually transmitted diseases spread. And crime associated with it. Sometimes it causes slavery because, like, pimps will make those that work for them, those women become slaves.
I think that's the strongest argument.
Yeah. In fact, one of the missionaries my church supports helps women in that situation to escape, and then they share the gospel with them. So yeah, that's and another thing, like, okay, I'm free legally to like swing my arms around as much as I want, but if I take this hand and just rapidly hit somebody in the face, I'm doing something with my own body, right? But the thing, it's my body, I should be able to do what I want to. It has some limitations.
It has some limitations, yeah.
But here's the thing, the same people that are saying for abortion, it's my body, my choice, yep, are the same ones that are saying you should get the COVID vaccine even if you don't want it. So we want the law to force you to get the COVID vaccine. Well, then I believe my body, my choice. So
yes,
if somebody wants it, fine, you get it. If someone like me who doesn't want it, what right do you have to tell me that I have to inject that COVID shot into my veins? That's, so.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Yep, it is a lot of the same people that are, saying my choice, my body, or also the same people saying everybody needs to get vaccine.
Yeah.
So yeah, they show their own hypocrisy when this came out. Now, one final thing before we wrap up, I promise, is the last thing. Pastor Gavin, it's not in the outline, but what are your thoughts on the fact that an opinion piece from the Supreme Court got leaked for the first time in all of American history?
Well, that's really sad because, like, courts are supposed to be isolated from public opinion, and so I have to think that the reason this was released was so that people would put pressure on the Supreme Court justices. I've heard that there have been protests.
There have been,
outside of their houses of the justices.
Justices have been getting death threats.
Yeah, and that's why we sequester juries.
Yep.
And don't allow the jurists to discuss the case with anyone, because like it's the jury that's supposed to arrive at their conclusion, and that's how it should be with the justices. So it's just a betrayal of that person's duties and confidentiality, and it's really a sad day.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree that it is a sad day because you do need to understand, everybody who's watching this. This has never happened, and a Supreme Court opinion getting leaked has never happened in all of American history. In all of American history, an opinion piece has never been leaked, ever.
Yeah. And I think someone from the left did it.
Yeah.
Because now when it comes out who did it, they'll be a hero. They'll write a book.
Yep.
And make a lot of money.
Yep.
And maybe advance their cause of intimidating some of the Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
Into voting their way.
Yes. And I do think Roe V Wade should be overturned. I think it should remain in the hands of the states. You are for a federal law, and I am not opposed to a federal law, but I do believe that it needs to happen at the state level first.
Yeah.
That's how federal law is supposed to be written, by the states. After enough of them have ratified the same laws, then it can become a federal law. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Of course, it hasn't worked like that in a long, long time.
And I'd have to look at the Constitution again to see, does the federal government have the power to regulate that?
To regulate what?
Abortion.
I'm
not certain.
Yeah.
Like, do they have authority to have anything to do with education? No.
Yes, because it does say in the Constitution that if it's not anything that is, it does say specifically in the Constitution that anything that is not spelled out in the Constitution
those powers are reserved to the
states. Yes, any powers not stated in the Constitution for the federal government are for the states.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if that's even constitutional for the federal government to rule on that issue. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly, and I would agree with that.
Research that.
Yeah, and even so, even if they were, it wouldn't happen until 2/3 of the states had it as a state law before the federal government should even make a federal law about it anyway. If you follow the Constitution, the federal government's not supposed to make laws. States are supposed to make laws, and then once enough states make the same law, then the federal government can make it a federal law. But that's not how it's been for a long time.
Yeah, well,
our federal government's been
has
making laws for a long time now.
Yeah, they've been usurping authority that belongs to the states.
Yes, states are slowly starting to take some of it back, though.
Yeah.
Marijuana is one of those things. States are starting to legalize it, even though it's technically still illegal at the federal level, I think. Yeah. Or did they? I think it's still illegal. We just have gotten lucky, and thank goodness we've had presidents that are instructing the Justice Department or asking the Justice Department to, stay away from prosecuting people where it's legal in states where it's legal. But that's how it's supposed to be done. That's how it's supposed to be done. States are supposed to do it at the state level. Then when enough states do it, the federal government recognizes it, and that's how it's supposed to be done. So that's how you need to do it. You want things to change? Pay attention to your local elections. Who's your representative? Who's your senator? Who's your congressman? And make sure you pay attention who you vote for them. I'm going to be starting to cover some elections here over the next couple of months until the election. I was going to do it at the beginning of the year, but not enough people had declared or made it through the primaries. I wanted to wait until we got at least close enough to the primaries and there were clear people running. So we'll be doing that over the next couple of months. We'll be doing covering a couple races. Pastor Gavin, go check out his YouTube channel. Just search for Pastor Gavin Whitcomb, and you can also find him on Facebook at facebook.com/mooresmountain.church. Marcus Frederiksen is going to play us out, as he always does. Check him out, reverbnation.com/Marcus Frederiksen. If you would like to support us, please give us a comment. Please share an episode. That's what's going to help us the most right now, is if you share episodes. Share episodes. You can also visit our storefront, get some gear. I just put up a whole bunch of new stuff on the storefront. We now have tie-dye available. We have new coffee mugs, bigger one too, Pastor Gavin. You might want to look into that. If you're a coffee drinker, but we have a bigger coffee mug now, 16 ounces, in addition to the 11-ounce mug, which sits here on my table. We have a 2-tone mug, so lots of stuff in the storefront. Go check it out, bonfire.com/store/The Boiling Point Podcast, all in lowercase letters. So please go check that out and pick up a piece of gear. And I believe that's going to be all. You can find YouTube, Rumble, those are our stations. My strike on YouTube is finally over, so I'll be getting back to updating the YouTube channel and getting it caught up so that all our episodes are available on YouTube and on Rumble. Well, not all of them, because I got a strike for one of them, so that one's not getting posted on YouTube. You'll have to go to Rumble to see that one specifically.
Is that the one that I was on?
Yeah. That was Pastor Gavin's episode where we talked about his experience with COVID-19. YouTube, as soon as I posted it, YouTube was like, yo, you got a strike. This has false information.
Now, they didn't take that off of my channel.
We didn't put that one up on your channel.
Oh, okay.
It was the one after. It was right after you had COVID-19.
Yeah.
And we did not put that one up on your channel.
It's
a good thing we didn't.
Yeah.
Because then you would have had a strike.
Yeah.
But I'll be getting the YouTube channel updated now. Rumble is the main channel that we operate out of, but I am getting the YouTube channel upgraded. Senior Faith Correspondent, Pastor Gavin Whitcomb, Sr. I am your host, JD, and that's the end. I'm not around, have you found? I'm always on you.